Hi, Matthew Gorge. Matthew, you've been a friend of mine for about, I would say, good 15 years. We've worked together, Motherboard and VigiTrust. You're, I think, the first person that I know who has had a book published by ForbesBooks, which is absolutely brilliant. But just before we go into the details of the book, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Owen. I've been in cybersecurity for over 20 years. I have my background is in security reselling and auditing and training. And in 2003, I started a business called VigiTrust. VigiTrust today is a provider of software as a service, integrated risk management tools. So what that means is we have an award-winning tool called VigiOne. And what VigiOne does is it allows clients to prepare for, validate and manage compliance on an ongoing basis with legal and industry security frameworks around data privacy and data protection, which is where I believe also Motherboard plays. And so the clients that we have would be in the healthcare, financial services industry, retail, hospitality and higher education. And one of the things that I noticed over the years, helping them getting trained and writing policies and so on, was that the C-level folks and the board of directors did not really understand their mandates with regards to cyber responsibility and cyber accountability. And so one of the issues right now, if you look at the Data Protection Act or the Companies Act in Ireland or in the UK or the equivalent in the EU or even in the US, is that as a director of a company, as a senior executive, I have a duty of care towards the data of my employees, my clients and my providers. And so what the company has been doing is providing training on that, solutions and so on. And at some stage, it was put to me by our Global Advisory Board, which is a not-for-profit think tank, that I should probably try and write an opinion paper, which I did. And then they were like, well, maybe you could write a book. And so unbeknownst to myself, I just signed up for a second job when I said yes. So.
Oh, very good. And before we come into the book, I'm also keen to know, because I know that I worked with you very closely when you were president of the France-Ireland Chamber of Commerce. I worked with you on the French Commercial Councillors Organisation, where I know right. You are now deputy president, and you've also been the head of VigiTrust since VigiTrust started, and you've grown the business to have offices, I know, in New York, in Paris, in London, and I think in Australia.
We're thinking of Australia, yeah.
Thinking of Australia. I know you've been out there on a number of occasions. Where did you get the time to do all of this?
So I have an ability to bend time. I don't really like the reality is that if you look at the work that we do with the France-Ireland Chamber of Commerce for bilateral trade and the work that we do with the trade advisors, there's a big overlap, right? So at the end of the day, we want to promote trade between two countries. And we come at it with different angles, but certainly with the same overarching goal to boost trade between the two countries. From a VigiTrust perspective, I think security has become a passion for me. Sure. So I would read every day for at least an hour in increments of 10 minutes, 15 minutes, like what's happening, the latest threats, the latest case studies and so on. I try and keep my finger on the pulse, but I'm very lucky that I have that advisory board that I created nearly 10 years ago now, with some fantastic people that come in, and some of them having been a moderator a couple of times, that we bring in all those brains that are happy to share information. So I think that you do need to be driven by passion, yeah.
Sure. And I know that certainly from Motherboard's point of view, I know we have a lot of the chief executives who come to us and say, what is the situation with cybersecurity? How am I going to defend myself as things are getting more and more complicated? But I think you've broken it down, haven't you, in terms of what VigiTrust does and in terms of what's in the book, which I will come to in a minute. Yeah. But in terms of that, the 5 pillars I know that you talked about.
Yeah. So the 5 pillars of security framework is a methodology that I created about 12 years ago, and that's been used by VigiTrust in its training, in its policy frameworks, and in fact in VigiOne, in the tool itself. And it's based on a very simple concept that if you look at GDPR, you look at PCI, you look at ISO, you look at critical infrastructure protection with the NIS directive in Europe or with NERC and FERC in the US, you look at any type of new regulation in Australia, in Russia, wherever you look at, you always dial back to 5 key common denominators: physical security, people security, data security, infrastructure security, which is your wider infrastructure, so your networks, your subsidiaries, your franchisees, your applications, your third-party vendors, your remote workers, and so on. And then crisis management, what do you do when something goes wrong? And so the ethos behind it, or the reasoning behind it, is that if you can explain to a board of directors or to C-level folks that are not technically minded or legally minded or cybersecurity minded, that everything dials back to those 5 key common things, right? Physical security. I can't just steal something, like steal a physical asset or get into the server and server room and so on. People security. I know who's coming in, who's leaving. I know the visitors that are coming in. I know where they've been. So I know if they've had access to confidential areas or not. Data security. Well, there's some data that's in the public domain, some that's for managers, some that's just for the board. Infrastructure, do I know my ecosystem? And crisis management, what do I do when something goes wrong? So the board and C-level executives, they react really well when you speak their language. And when you use terms that are not like those three-letter acronyms that we use all the time in IT.
Yeah. And you've now gone ahead and actually written a book which is published by Forbes. Did you write? Is it all yours, or have you actually included other people actually in the production of the book? Or,
yeah, so I have so the book is being published by ForbesBooks, which is a division of Forbes, and the book, about 80% of the book is about the methodology, my background, and some of the points that we just covered in more detail. And then I've got some guest chapter contributors that have written about application security, security in banking, security during the digital transformation process, security in education, and so on. And all of them are members of the VG Trust Advisory Board. And they all bring a different level of a different field of expertise that complements really well the 5 pillars. And for each of the guest chapters, they then benchmark their own approach against the 5 pillars. So as a reader, you kind of get like a user's manual in the main part of the book with a guidance for the methodology. And then the second part of the book, the guest chapters, actually it gives you case studies. So it's quite good. It's much more practical that way.
Okay, and in terms of the C-level, the C-level people, it's aimed particularly at C-level, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really trying to address that challenge that they have, which is that they don't necessarily understand the cyber accountability mandate, right? So they don't necessarily understand their role as a director with regards to data protection. So the book covers various regulations and frameworks that any CEO should know of. That touch on cybersecurity and generic network security. And it's really aimed at giving them the ability to get started if they don't know where to get started, or to improve the process if they've already started the process. So the 5 pillars of security framework has two levels. One is called the super strategic questionnaire, and the other one is the strategic questionnaire. The super strategic questionnaire is 5 questions per pillar, so 25 questions. And the strategic one has 12 questions per pillar, so 60 questions. And the answers to the questions in the questionnaires are very, very simple. They are, so the question could be, for instance, I am 100% confident that I have good, demonstrable physical security throughout the company. And the answer is, yes, absolutely. Yes, I think so. No, I'm not sure. No, absolutely not. I don't care. Or it doesn't apply to my business. And we have the ability within the methodology to raise red flags. As you can understand, if somebody who's responsible for operational security says, I don't care to that question, it will automatically raise a red flag. And then in the strategic questionnaire, you essentially get the red flags, and then you get an action plan that will say to you, okay, well, because of your answers that way, it means that you have to do training, you have to put in a new policy for your firewall, you have to implement a new intrusion detection system or something like that. And what we've done is, obviously, VG Trust provides VG1, which is a tool. We've put in the 5 pillars on VG1, and we make that available free of charge to many people, but within the book you actually get a license of VG1 for that. And it allows you to essentially automate that process. So a case study could be, you've got a board of directors and senior executive team, maybe 20 people. The first time round, they all do the super strategic questionnaire. The solution VG1 will actually compute the results and say, okay, all together, this is where you're faring with regards to physical, people, data, infrastructure security, and crisis management. And now we're going to zoom in on this area or this type of managers and so on. And then it gives you what we call compliance intelligence, so that you can take the right corrective action.
That's great. Is the book available? It's already published? Or,
So the electronic copy of the book is available on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, and also on Apple. And obviously you can find information on that on the VG Trust website as well.
Great. Okay. And where, after this, you've got your company doing very well, I understand, and I know it is. You published the book. What's next for Mathieu Gorge? Probably
a few days off to catch my breath. I think that there's a lot of other areas within cyber that are of interest to me, and in particular right now I've started to do a lot more research around critical infrastructure protection, and so I think that the next step for us is as a company is to keep growing. We're a scaling company. For me personally, I'm passionate about cyber, so I'm going to continue to learn, and if I can share my knowledge with other people, either through another book or through the advisory board, I certainly will. Well, I'm looking forward to being, I hope, a part of that in terms of the advisory board, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you get on. But I think at that point, Mathieu, I'll say thank you very much. Thank you very much, Owen. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.